What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be going over some of the most difficult situations that wide receivers are faced with and how you guys can beat those situations. So I'm talking like, how can you run a slant route versus inside shade press? How can you guys run a 10 to 12 yard corner versus outside shade press, outside shade off man? How can you run an outside breaking route? All those tough situations we are going to solve and figure out for you today. So I hope this video gives you guys a ton of value. And again, fellas, we are coming out to 15 different cities across the country for 2-day long QB and wide receiver camps this year. So check out that very first link in the description below if you'd like to sign up to train with myself and my staff of coaches. We are coming out to San Francisco, California first. That camp is completely sold out. Then we're going to be coming out to Miami, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, Charlotte, North Carolina, Portland, Oregon, Dallas, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Chicago, Illinois, Buffalo, New York, Atlanta, Georgia, Houston, Texas. Then we'll be coming out to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan, Boise, Idaho, and Los Angeles, California. So again, fellas, if you want some more information, want to learn how you can sign up, check out that very first link in the description below. Let's get started with this video. All right, guys, so the first situation we're going to be talking about is a post route versus an inside shade press coverage DB. Now, this is a little bit of a difficult situation, right? Because anytime that a DB is lined up inside leverage, which just means that he's shaded a little bit to the inside instead of right in front of us, that means he's trying to prevent the inside route. He does not want me to run a slant, a post, a dig. So it's a little bit tricky, right? But it's an easy process once you know what to do at the line of scrimmage in terms of a pre-snap process. So when you come up to the line of scrimmage, the first thing you want to identify on the DB is, in fact, his leverage. Is he inside shade? Is he head up? Or is he outside shade? Because that can tell you a lot about what he is trying to accomplish with his coverage. Then the second thing that you want to identify is the distance between the two of you. Because if you can identify those two things, leverage and distance, that helps you come up with your pre-snap plan, aka what you're going to do with your release off the ball or what you're going to do at the top of the route if this DB isn't off coverage, right? Because he could be in press coverage right up on the line, not giving us any space. He could be maybe 2 yards away like this example. He could be 5 yards away, or he could be 8 yards away, right? It all depends, and that's what we want to look for. So now let's watch what CeeDee Lamb does here. So in theory, we have a guy who's inside shade, and we have an inside breaking route. And we're going to show an example of this in a second on another route as well. Now, when he's inside shade, our goal would be to, okay, I'm going to attack his leverage. I'm going to close this distance with him and try to get him to keep his leverage to the inside, right? I'm going to go at him. I'm going to try to step on his toes and give him a fake to the inside. So that DB will keep his leverage because remember, that's his responsibility. Don't give it up. And then we could take an outside release. And because we closed the distance with him and got to his toes, it should be easy to run right past him and stack over the top, right? Or at least just run where he's right on my hip. And I could use my inside hand to swat him by and slip under him. But this DB disguises his leverage. And this is something that I want all of you guys to understand. We're going to show an example after this of him not disguising his leverage, but watch what he does here. So CeeDee Lamb goes to attack him inside, but this DB just sits there. He doesn't protect his leverage, so CeeDee Lamb does a great job of just taking what the DB gives us. So let's talk about it, right? And we're going to show an example where a DB doesn't do this in a second, where he actually does move to the inside. But I want to talk about this first. So you see initially, CeeDee Lamb's closing the space. He's trying to attack his toes, trying to see what this DB is going to do. Anytime that we are doing releases, we always have to be prepared to react. I talked about it for about a minute in this video already. I talked about you look at the DB's leverage and the distance he has from you so you can come up with your pre-snap plan. What release am I going to use? How am I going to structure this route? But when you close the distance with him, if he doesn't keep that leverage to the inside and he just sits there, dude, take the inside release. We did our job. If he's not going to protect the inside, take the inside. Because if you have an inside breaking route like a dig or a post, it's not mandatory that you release inside. But if we can release inside, I want to release inside. So CeeDee Lamb shows a great example of us reacting. He closes the space. If this DB jumps to the inside, fine. Business as usual. Let's hit him with a move inside. Take the outside release. But if he just stays, take what that DB gives us and let's go. This is not a predetermined thing. He did not come up to the line of scrimmage and say, I'm running a post route, so I must take an inside release. We react off of the DB, and we also have to have a plan. So let's play this full speed, then we'll show an example of a dig route versus this inside shade press look and how you want to approach it if the DB keeps that leverage. Okay, so I know it's kind of tough to see this DB right here. But he is lined up, like you see how this wide receiver's on the top of the numbers. DB's shaded a little bit to the inside. He's got obviously inside shade coverage, and this wide receiver's running a dig. So remember, the game plan off the line of scrimmage, first thing we want to identify, his leverage and the distance he has between us. So in this case, he's a little bit closer, right? Not giving us much room to breathe, but he's still inside shade. So his distance doesn't necessarily dictate his responsibility. The distance the DB has from us dictates my release. His responsibility is dictated by his leverage. So he's inside leverage, so we're assuming trying to prevent the inside route. So what our game plan should be, let's attack him to the inside and take the outside release. Unless he just gives us the inside, then we could just take it. So let's watch what this receiver does. So he does this move, but you see how that DB protects his leverage. That DB shades to the inside. With our fake to the inside, we get him to protect the leverage. He wants to keep the inside, wants to force us outside, and do not give up the inside route. Perfect. So now we can just take what the DB gives us, which is the outside release. You guys cannot be afraid to release opposite of the side of the route that you are breaking. So if I'm running an inside breaking route, I cannot be afraid to release to the outside. Just like if I'm running an outside breaking route, I can't be afraid to release to the inside if that DB gives me outside shade press. And we're going to show an example of this as this video goes on. But just going to talk about this first. So now he takes the outside release. What happens next? We want to try to get skinny and we want to try to work to stack. You want to either stack or you want them right on your hip so you could use a throw by move. So this is why it's important, fellas, to close the distance. How many of you guys have ever heard me say it, another receiver coach say it? You want to get skinny on your routes. That essentially means you want to try when you are pushing up vertical to the break point, you want to try to run as tight as you can to this DB. You want to get hip to hip with him, get skinny, because when you are getting skinny, it makes it easier to fight the hands and it makes it easier to put you in a position where you have this guy stacked. And when you have him stacked, guess what? This is no different than you taking an inside release on an inside breaking route. You have him stacked. So you have essentially a two-way go, which means you could run an out route, an in route, you go post, you go corner, because you have him stacked. And he gives him this great like rocker step type cut at the top of the break. And you see, he's got all this space, separation, and timing with the quarterback. That's why we want to take that release, fellas. Let's talk about why. Because remember, we want to take this outside release because some of you might be thinking, well, why not just force it and just get up into the route and then go? Because why is a DB in press coverage in the first place, number one? He's in press coverage in the first place because he's trying to get hands on us and disrupt the timing with the quarterback. That's the whole purpose of him jamming. That's the whole purpose of him walking down, to get hands on us, disrupt the timing. So if we just force the release to the inside, not only is this guy gonna guaranteed get hands on me because he's trying to protect the inside route. He's taught, do not give up the inside. He's going to get hands, but also the spacing of the play is off. Let's say this wide receiver is running a dig. Let's say it's a real play concept, and we have a slot receiver also running a dig. Let's say his is at 8, ours is at 10. And if you get rerouted way here and you run this dig and you're right next to him, one defender could guard both routes, and that's horrible spacing on the play. So we got to take what he gives us to make sure the spacing of the play is there and the timing is there. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, coach, I do all this, but I can't stack the guy. Maybe I'm on the slower side of things. Maybe I'm not the most physical wide receiver. This DB's right on my hip. If you're in this position at the break point, what do you think you should do? You should take that inside arm at the break point. Let's say the break point's at 15 yards. Right at 15, when you go to drop your hips to break, you should take that inside arm, put it on the back of his shoulder, back of his hip, and throw him by and slip underneath him. It doesn't mean, in this situation, you don't have to stack him every single time. Sometimes we can, but we still got to be able to get that separation at the break point. That's why it's good to work on many different moves to use at the top of the break. Not many, like 100. I'm talking like 5 or 6 things that you can apply. And like I said, we're about to show an example of this just on an outside breaking route versus outside shade press. So this is how you would do it, fellas. Is remember, this video is all about situations. What are the tough situations that receivers are faced with? And guys, these videos, like, these are all based on questions that you guys ask us. So if you have questions on different kind of route looks, different kind of situations that you're faced with, ask us. We will make a video on it because you guys are what fuel the channel, and we could not appreciate that more. So if you got questions, ask, and we will make a video on it answering it, okay? So now, this wide receiver, this is Garrett Wilson. He is going to be running a 10-yard out route, and he's got this like outside shade press coverage look. So this is a little bit different, but honestly, quite frankly, the same as the last example. It's just you're running a different type of route. You're running an out route instead of an in route, but it's the same concepts. It's just flipped. So what he has is he has outside shade press. Why would a DB ever play outside shade press? Number one, take away the outside route. Also, probably because he's expecting the outside route, because what does Garrett Wilson have? He has a reduced split. He is lined up very close to his right tackle. So usually when wide receivers cut their splits down, they either do it to run a drag or they do it to run an outside breaking route. So when this DB's outside shade, he's smart. He's thinking, okay, I'm anticipating the outside route, and he also probably has safety help to the inside. So if Wilson just takes off and runs like a post, he's running right into the safety help. So we have to be prepared for this. So if you're running a 10-yard out, do you think you want to force the outside release, or do you think you want to take the inside release? Take the inside release. Because remember, if we just try to run around this dude, going to get hands, and especially on an out route, a corner route, anything outside breaking, timing is super important, and spacing. So if you guys get forced all the way to that sideline and break on an out route, and you don't give your quarterback any room, that's not going to be a completed pass. He probably won't even throw the ball anyways. So let's take what he gives us. Let's watch what Wilson does. So he closes the space, attacks, takes the inside release, and you see what I mean by slipping underneath. He did not have to stack. So let's talk about it. So he goes here. Now remember, how we come up with my release off the line. Distance and leverage. So DB's maybe about a yard or two away. I would say maybe a yard and a half outside leverage. So his game plan is I'm going to close that gap. I'm going to make him think I'm going to the outside to widen him and take this inside release. So I could keep timing with my quarterback and give the quarterback space to the sideline to throw me open. So he comes off the ball here. You see how he attacks. He attacks him, closes the space, fakes like he's going outside. DB opens, right? Takes the inside release. But notice, this DB's pretty quick. He's staying over the top. He's not allowing Garrett Wilson to stack over the top of him. So what does he do? At the break point, puts the brakes on, drops the hips. He's getting low. Something that helps you guys decelerate like this, you want to think you bring your chest to your quad and you drop your butt down as quick as you can, almost like you are playing musical chairs. So we could stop on a dime. He slips underneath the DB, and look at all of this room that he gave his quarterback, and he did not waste any time on the route by getting jammed. This is exactly how you want to play this, fellas. And then again, if he was pressed up right in front of your face, you wouldn't need to close any space. You could just give him a quick fake and take the inside release. Remember, our release is how we run routes. DB's leverage and DB's distance. So let's play this full speed one more time. Great job by Wilson working that out route, breaking underneath and slipping underneath to win on that route. Okay, so now, a difficult route for a lot of guys. We just got done talking about attacking leverage, taking what the DB gives us, etc. What if the DB is sitting right where we need to break and he's onto a specific leverage? So for this example, this DB is shaded a little bit to the inside and we have to run a slant route, right? What if this DB's 8 yards away and you got to go run a post route, but the break's at 8 to 10? You don't have to necessarily worry about your press release. What you have to worry about is getting that DB to open up the gate and think fade. No different than if you had to run a 10-yard out and you had a DB sitting outside shade at 8 yards. What we were trying to do is get the DB to flip his hips. Whenever the DB is sitting at a break point, like sitting right where we need to make our break, our goal should be to flip his hips. So when we have to run a slant route versus inside shade press, we want to use something called a diamond release. So a diamond release is what George Kittle uses right here. It's 3 hard steps attacking the DB's outside shoulder and hip. Why do they call it a diamond release? Because when you draw a diamond, you know how you started out with like 2 45-degree angles? This is essentially like the diamond, right? Like a baseball diamond, if you will. So we attack on a 45. You don't want to attack on a 45 and be really wide. You want to go right at his outside shoulder and right at his outside hip. The goal is to make him think fade. So when we take those 3 hard steps, Kittle gives a little move inside. That's the first step. Second, third. When you take those 3 steps, guys, it's got to be fast. We have to gain ground, and your hips and shoulders have to sell like you are running a fade. Goal is to get him to open up. So now I could use my inside arm, just like that dig route or that out route that we were talking about, throw him by, and look what happened. I got spacing and I have timing. Guys, if you just try to force it in this situation, DB's inside shade, and we just try to take off and go run, like I said, remember, his goal is to prevent the inside route and get hands and press coverage. He's going to get hands, going to disrupt timing, and disrupt spacing. Imagine if you had a slant, let's say it was a double slant concept, and you got rerouted and then broke to the slant. You'd be running right into your slot receiver if you're on the outside. If you're on the slot, what do you have right here? You got your right tackle. If you're out of the slot and you get rerouted and break, you're running into all this crap in the middle of the field. So fellas, we have to keep spacing and we have to keep timing. So let's talk about another scenario.
Let's say you had inside shade press, or inside shade, off man, and you had to run a post. He was sitting at 8, your break was at 10. What do you think you'd do? Would you stem him to the inside and then break? No, because remember, his leverage dictates what his responsibilities are. So the second you start to stem him inside, he's going to weave and keep his leverage, because his goal, don't give up the inside. So what you would do when you have that inside shade guy is you would go right at his outside shoulder, try to get him to open, and slip underneath. Essentially a longer diamond release. But whenever the DB is sitting right where we need to break, our goal should be to open up his hips. DB's outside shade, I got to run a 10-yard out. I'm going right at his inside hip and his inside shoulder to get him to flip open so I could slip under. It's all about getting that DB to flip his hips, fellas, when we're faced with that uncomfortable situation when he's right at the break point.